A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today. So cheers. Today I am looking at the Riddler Year 1. This is the 6-issue prequel series to The Batman, the film that came out in 2022. This is focused, of course, on the character of Edward Nashton, the Riddler from the film, with art by Stevan Subic and written by Paul Dano, the actor who played Edward Nashton in the film. I picked this up a while ago from a friend's comic book store and board game cafe here in Seoul, and absolutely loved it. But it's taken me a while to get round to the review just because life stuff kind of got in the way. So I'm not going to natter on for much longer. I am just going to tell you, those of you that don't want it spoiled, this is a fairly spoiler-free review. Unlike other graphic novels, I don't go into story beat detail as much as I used to, simply because I don't want to spoil this. I want people to read it and then make up their own mind about the character from the film itself. So there you go. But I do go over it. I do show off the art. Phenomenal art. The writing's fantastic. So, yeah, listen, we're just going to get right into the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. 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 People.
So, this is The Riddler Year 1, written by Paul Dano. Paul Dano, of course, being the actor who played Edward Nashton in the movie The Batman. This is the direct prequel to that, of course, and art by Stevan Subic. Now, just have a look at that cover for a moment. It is, in my opinion, chillingly fantastic. I really, really freaking love the design of the Riddler. Now, this was a 6-issue kind of mini-series, a prequel series to the film The Batman, which was released in 2022. I am not going to go into detail, like page at a time, and tell you the story. I'm just going to give you a kind of a brief overview and give you a chance to admire the art, because the art in this is absolutely phenomenal. The reason I don't want to go into details with this is, if you haven't seen the movie, it might spoil some parts to it. And I highly urge those of you that haven't seen it, that were kind of umming and ahhing about seeing it 2 years ago because Robert Pattinson was cast as Bruce Wayne / Batman, please see this movie. I recently rewatched it. I watched it and I thought, back in the day when it first came out, I'm like, okay, that was all right. I rewatched it recently, like in the past 3 weeks, just so that when I read this for the review, the movie would be clear in my mind. Controversially, it's one of my favorite Batman films now. I really, really love it. The aesthetic, the tone, the story, the characters, they all just work. So let's open this puppy up. Here. And we get an introduction written by Paul Dano himself, and the introduction basically explains that what Paul did to get into the character of the Riddler, of Edward Nashton, was to basically elaborate on his backstory. He had what was given in the script, but he wanted to elaborate on it a little bit more. So he wrote this kind of backstory for the character, showed it to the director, Matt Reeves, I believe, and the director said, this should be a comic. And after, back and forth, the 6-issue miniseries is what came out of it. So this is really kind of like the actors' notes on the character themselves, which I thought was really interesting. That is the cover to issue 1. Immediately, the art you can see is very different to what one would expect. And we basically get Edward Nashton in his job as a forensic accountant, kind of doing his work and basically getting shit on at every opportunity, just lamenting the state of the city. At night, he goes onto websites and things like that, and everyone's talking about the Batman, because by the time the movie came out, the Batman, Bruce Wayne had been Batman for 2 years. So the movie kind of starts when he's already established himself as Batman. So this first issue, we get some of these pages. We get these through the series, kind of like Edward letting out all of his frustrations and whatnot. And you see him kind of just lamenting the state of the city is basically this kind of first issue. Then we move into issue 2. Issue 2 goes a little deeper into Edward discovering that there is some money problems with certain accounts and kind of trying to work out exactly what's going on. Again, I'm not going into detail. He's trying to put it all together. But it develops his kind of curiosity at trying to solve problems, is what we're getting here, while at the same time kind of putting himself in the middle of those problems because he's seen Batman do it, so he wants to kind of emulate or live up to Batman helping Gotham City. We move into issue 3, where he sends the evidence he's acquired to the commissioner of the Gotham City PD. I love how the kind of splash page, they've split it up into panels. I think that is super effective and it looks really, really good. But ultimately, that doesn't fall into the hands of the commissioner. At this point, he's communicating with the daughter of one of the kind of lackeys that was roped into like laundering money. And now, because that guy is dead, his daughter has to do it. And Edward wants to get her out of that life, but she's too scared. So at this point, he's literally trying to help. There is nothing overly or inherently evil about him. He's being, at this stage, more altruistic than anything else. And then he kind of starts to put everything together, as you would expect. The renewal fund was a fund that was set up by Thomas Wayne to kind of help Gotham's like orphanages and hospitals and things. And then after the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne, everyone just started taking money out of the renewal fund like it was their own personal bank, like corruptly using it. Now, this is issue 4. This is where we get a lot of Edward's backstory in the orphanage. You can see the tone and the shading is kind of like that sepia green almost. And we see how he was kind of bullied, but his genius kind of shines through, so people can see that he's kind of super intelligent. He meets Thomas Wayne when Thomas Wayne comes to the orphanage, and Edward has this kind of idea that Thomas is going to make everything much, much better. Which, as we all know how that kind of turns out. of course. Now, issue 5 is mostly kind of the Riddler's manifesto, which is really fun to read if you're like a fan of the character and a fan of this kind of whole IP, so to speak. A lot of detail has gone into this. Paul Dano did a fantastic job, and the artist Stevan Subic did amazing work, kind of getting this all together. And then we see that no one is kind of willing to help, and that leads us into issue 6, where Edward has actually gotten tickets for the woman who he was trying to save to get her out of town. And this is where he kind of starts his descent, so to speak, into the Riddler that we see at the beginning of the Batman, which is really, really cool. So there we have it. We also have, of course, the variant covers, which are always nice to kind of see. Quite a lot of them. And the art of the Riddler there. Okay, so I glossed over this pretty quickly, but I did that for a reason. What did I ultimately think of this? I absolutely loved it. You don't need to read this to enjoy the movie, but this really helps you to kind of view the character of the Riddler in a bit of a new light. It adds a little bit of depth to the character. That is not to say that the Riddler in the Batman is like this one-dimensional Batman villain. He really isn't. He is a really sinister sort of character that kind of believes himself to be doing the same thing as Batman. But this book just helps you to kind of get an idea as to why, if that is something that you're interested in. Of course, not a lot of people like that, and that's perfectly fine. Would I recommend this? Yes. Do you have to read it? No. There you go. So if you enjoyed this video, please have a drink. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so any videos that we put out in the future you don't actually miss. Now, I have a few things in the works when it comes to book reviews and whatnot, so stay tuned for that. Playglance Media is working on some exciting stuff. I know Mr. Ian Van Gammett has been working hard on various art projects and things like that, so stay tuned for that. We will keep you updated in the future. But for now, I just want to say, stay safe, have a fantastic rest of your day, but most importantly, read a fucking book, people.